Jack Ketchum. The name alone sends a shiver down the spine of anyone who's ever dared to wander the shadowy corridors of horror fiction. He's not just an author, he's a legend, a master craftsman whose stories have left an indelible mark on the genre. When you hear his name, you know you're about to enter a world where the rules are different, where safety is an illusion, and where the darkness is all too real. That's a name whispered among horror fans, you know? It's spoken in hushed tones at conventions, in late-night conversations, and in online forums where aficionados gather to discuss the most disturbing tales ever written. There's a kind of reverence, a shared understanding that Ketchum's work isn't for the faint of heart. His stories are the ones you recommend with a warning, the ones you remember long after the lights go out. His work is, well, notorious, unflinching. Ketchum doesn't just flirt with the macabre. He embraces it, exploring the darkest corners of the human psyche with a raw honesty that's both terrifying and mesmerizing. His novels don't offer easy scares or cheap thrills. Instead, they challenge you, forcing you to confront the uncomfortable truths that lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. He's the kind of writer who makes you question what you do in the face of true evil. Ketchum doesn't shy away from darkness. He drags you into it, makes you confront the unspeakable. He's a guide through the abyss, unafraid to show you the monsters that live not just under the bed but inside the human heart. His stories are journeys into the unknown, where every shadow hides a secret and every silence is heavy with dread. He doesn't just write about horror, he makes you feel it, deep in your bones. The Girl Next Door stands as a testament to his mastery of horror. It's not just a book, it's an experience, one that leaves readers shaken and forever changed. Based on a true story, it's a novel that strips away the comforting layers of fiction and exposes the raw, brutal reality of human cruelty. Ketchum's writing is so vivid, so relentless, that you can't help but be pulled into the nightmare he creates. It's a chilling tale that honestly burrows under your skin. The fear isn't just in the monsters or the violence, it's in the way Ketchum captures the small, everyday moments that lead to horror. The slow build of tension, the sense of helplessness, the realization that evil can exist anywhere, even in the most ordinary places. It's the kind of story that makes you look over your shoulder, that makes you question the people you think you know. A story that stays with you long after you finish the last page. It lingers in your thoughts, haunting your dreams, making you reconsider the boundaries of right and wrong. Ketchum's characters are so real, so deeply human, that their pain becomes your own. You find yourself thinking about them days, weeks, even years later, wondering if you could have done anything differently, if you could have saved them. It's a story that begs the question, how far can human cruelty go? Ketchum doesn't offer easy answers. Instead, he forces us to confront the darkest parts of ourselves, to acknowledge that the capacity for evil exists in everyone. His work is a mirror, reflecting not just the horrors of the world, but the shadows that lurk within our own hearts. That's what makes him the true master of horror, a writer who doesn't just scare us but changes us. Suburban America, a seemingly peaceful neighborhood, but behind closed doors, a nightmare unfolds. The Girl Next Door tells the story of Meg and Susan, two sisters who escape their abusive home. They end up in the care of their aunt, Ruth Chandler, a woman who appears ordinary, but beneath the surface lies a sadist, a monster in disguise. Meg and Susan arrive at their aunt's house seeking refuge. Instead, they find a prison. Ruth, the seemingly kind aunt, becomes their tormentor. Her cruelty knows no bounds. David, a neighborhood boy, witnesses the horror. He's torn between fear and a desperate need to help. The story revolves around these four characters, their lives interwoven in a web of manipulation, fear, and unspeakable violence. The Girl Next Door is not just a work of fiction, it's inspired by a real-life case, the murder of Sylvia Likens, a young girl tortured to death in 1965. Ketchum's novel takes inspiration from this horrific event. It amplifies the cruelty, exposing the darkest corners of human nature. So, is evil born or made? This is a question that has haunted philosophers, psychologists, and storytellers for centuries. When we look at the darkest corners of human behavior, we're forced to wonder, are some people simply destined to do harm, or does the world shape them into what they become? The answer, as you might expect, is never simple. It's a question that sits at the heart of Ketchum's novel, and it's one that lingers long after you've turned the final page. Ketchum's novel doesn't really offer us any easy answers. Instead, it immerses us in a world where the boundaries between good and evil are blurred, and where the roots of cruelty seem to twist through the most ordinary soil. The story unfolds in a setting that feels familiar: suburban streets, quiet homes, the kind of places we all know. But beneath that surface, something far more disturbing is at work. Ruth, the perpetrator, is honestly a chilling portrait of evil, but she's not a cartoon villain. She's a mother, a neighbor, someone who could easily be mistaken for just another face in the crowd. That's what makes her so unsettling. Her actions are monstrous, but her presence is disturbingly mundane. She's the embodiment of the idea that evil doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. It can wear the mask of normalcy, and her motivations, they stay pretty complex. Is it sadism? Is it a deep-seated need to inflict pain? Or is it something more insidious, like a desperate attempt to assert control over her world? The novel never lets us settle on a single answer. Instead, it forces us to sit with the discomfort of not knowing, to recognize that sometimes people do terrible things for reasons that even they might not fully understand. Or maybe just a need for control. Ruth's actions seem to stem from a place of deep insecurity, a fear of losing her grip on the world around her. In her quest to dominate, she becomes both jailer and prisoner, trapped by her own cruelty. The novel invites us to consider how the desire for power can twist into something unrecognizable, and how the line between victim and perpetrator can sometimes blur. The novel really forces us to confront this uncomfortable reality about evil. It's not always a distant, abstract force. Sometimes it's right next door, or even inside ourselves. Ketchum doesn't let us look away. He asks us to examine the shadows in our own lives, to question what we're capable of under the right or wrong circumstances. It asks us to acknowledge that, yeah, it can exist anywhere, in any neighborhood, behind any door. The most terrifying thing about the evil in this story is how unremarkable it looks from the outside. There's no warning sign, no dramatic music, just the quiet hum of everyday life, hiding something unspeakable. Even in the most mundane settings, darkness can take root. Ketchum's novel is a stark reminder that evil isn't always a distant monster. It can be woven into the fabric of our daily lives, waiting for a moment to reveal itself. And perhaps the scariest part is realizing that sometimes, the line between good and evil is thinner than we'd like to believe. At its core, The Girl Next Door is a story about innocence lost. Meg and Susan endure unspeakable horrors, their childhood stolen by abuse. The novel doesn't shy away from depicting the raw, brutal realities of child abuse. It really forces us to confront the devastating consequences of such cruelty, the emotional scars that run deep. The Girl Next Door is not for the faint of heart. Ketchum holds nothing back. Scenes of torture, humiliation, murder. The novel's power lies in its unflinching portrayal of violence. One scene that stands out, Ruth branding Meg, a chilling display of cruelty that leaves a permanent mark, both on Meg's body and the reader's psyche. Why is The Girl Next Door considered one of the most disturbing novels ever written? It's more than just the violence, it's the emotional impact, the way Ketchum makes you feel every blow, every act of degradation. The story stays with you, haunts you, forces you to confront the dark potential that exists within humanity. The Girl Next Door is not an easy story to read. From the very first page, it unsettles you. The words seem to press down on your chest, making you pause, making you question whether you want to keep going. But there's a reason stories like this exist, and a reason we need to face them, even when every instinct tells us to look away. But it's an important one. Stories that disturb us, that make us uncomfortable, are often the ones that matter most. They force us to step outside our comfort zones and see the world as it really is, not just as we wish it to be. They remind us that darkness exists, not just in fiction, but in the real world, sometimes closer than we'd like to admit. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. We're asked to look at the parts of humanity we'd rather ignore, the cruelty, the indifference, the capacity for harm that can exist in ordinary people. These stories don't let us turn away. They hold up a mirror and ask us to see not just the characters but ourselves reflected in the glass, to acknowledge the capacity for evil that exists within us all. It's a difficult thing to admit, but these stories remind us that the line between good and evil isn't always as clear as we'd like. Sometimes it's a thin, fragile thread, and it's up to us to decide which side we stand on. By exploring the darkest corners of human nature, Ketchum challenges us to be better, to protect the innocent. He doesn't just show us horror for its own sake, he asks us to feel it, to understand it, and to vow to never let it happen again. These stories become a call to action, a reminder that we have a responsibility to each other, to speak out against injustice, to refuse to be silent when we see wrong being done. These stories give us the courage to raise our voices, to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. They remind us that silence can be its own kind of cruelty, to never look away from suffering, to bear witness even when it hurts. Because when we acknowledge pain, we also acknowledge the possibility of healing. We learn empathy, compassion, and the importance of reaching out to others in their darkest moments. Because sometimes the most important stories are the hardest to tell. They challenge us, change us, and ultimately, they remind us of our shared humanity. In facing the darkness, we find the light, and in telling these stories, we keep hope alive.